deputy sheriff. Different times he's called a constable for a certain area, the Chuckatuck district in Suffolk, which was Nansemond County at the time. He was all over this area, working all over North Carolina, Maryland, other places. His actual name was John J.S. Branch. Hurricane is a nickname that he got over time, actually from a reporter, I believe with the Virginian Pilot back in that day. And it made reference to the fact that when he was on a case that he never stopped, that he just went and went and went until he finally got it resolved or got the person he was after. Many people believe he might be the oldest active law enforcement officer in the country at that point, as far as his age and years of service. I think he had 59 at the time. He was born in 1856. He's buried in Cedar Hill Cemetery, but with Masonic rites. He was a very active Freemason, both in a lodge in Driver and in other places. Son of James Branch, Confederate blockade runner and Secret Service agent. So it sounds like he had some of that maybe in his blood. Mother died when he was young, moved to Isle of Wight County, which is part of the connection here. And then when he was in his early 30s, went to Nansemond County, remarried. And then these are listing the surviving children. The Library of Virginia has digital collections, and one of them that I was familiar with from the Historical Society is called the Hamblin Collection. So there was a gentleman, Fred Hamblin, that had a studio downtown Suffolk and took an unbelievable number of pictures of people of all ages, races, locations. It's quite a comprehensive collection. These two records, one of them says 3 generations of J.S.S. Branch. The other one has S.L. Branch on there, same thing, 3 generations. So S.L. would have been Shelby, one of his sons. Interesting thing is how popular he was in the newspaper, various newspapers, so that, as you may know, back in the day there was a society column, so to speak. A lot of people that were featured in these, they recorded where they went, what they did. So this is one of these to the Daily Press about his daughter being married. So again, with his family, Shelley Branch was 53 when he died. He also, as this says, was a founder and partner in a national detective agency that was both in Norfolk, and then there was a branch in Knoxville, Tennessee. He also, as you can see, J.T. Branch would have been his brother. He also worked with him in this business. Unfortunately, we have the death of Joseph Dixon, who was only 13 months old when he passed away of cholera. And so I wanted to mention that. We didn't have dates on the find a grave, but I did find this. This is his full obituary, some of which we've already covered here. But as you can see, it was pretty well featured in the newspaper, covering all these things about his life. To the left, this is Fanny Beatty, who was his second wife. And if you notice, she lived well beyond him, and she was in 90 and was a resident of Suffolk. And then to the right, you have John Taylor Branch the first. He died in 1974. It's really the only information I have on him. So the next part here is going to be articles and information about Hurricane Branch and his time with the Sheriff's Department, and how he was elected for different positions as well. So one of the best known detectives, renominated as a constable in the Chuckatuck District. He's listed here, but he's listed under the Holy Neck Magisterial District. And I think the reason that is because I believe this was after he moved to Suffolk. Here is a picture of him with the bloodhounds. And you'll see it's John and Tiger. They're the two main ones. But over time, he owns, I think, as many as 5 bloodhounds. He has young ones in training as he goes along. Gentleman in the article to the left, there was a deputy sheriff, Robert E. Norfleet. And evidently at some point, he and Hurricane Branch decided to partner up so they could cover more area, I'm assuming, with multiple dogs. But as you can see in this article, there was a disagreement on who got paid what in capturing this man Cotton, Walter Cotton, that they chased. And so they were kind of at odds and decided that there might be rival packs. So the next thing you see to the right is Hurricane Branch returning from Atlanta with 2 new dogs. And he paid $400 for them. These are the Tiger and John we're talking about. Big, big dogs. And as it says here, 80 to 90 pounds each. So again, he's moving forward. Deputy Norfleet, the owner of Tom, back to some rivalry there. The other thing that they did later on that I found really interesting is they put together these manhunts, they call them, or chases. So he and Norfleet arranged to have a person or persons actually run from them, hide, and have these dogs chase them. And it was all to show how well their dogs performed. And as you can see, they call it the sport. 2 men who are to be chased by the dogs, and they'll get a 2-hour start, and then they go after them. They even sent invitations out to the chiefs of police in these surrounding areas, and it was a big promotional thing. This is just another article about how they're proposing another manhunt, a live manhunt to show the dogs. So again, he was very popular, and I kind of equate it to what you see today with social media. And you see these people, influencers and others that, they get all of these views. But back in the day, in the 1900s primarily, he was in the paper so much and in various papers, it's unbelievable. When I searched newspapers.com and just put in Hurricane Branch, I got over 1,700 hits just in Virginia. Some of these sketches that I think are really cool from that time period. So Hurricane Branch and his famous bloodhounds, again, Tiger and John, and they're talking about this search for the assailant of Mrs. Ralph Weber in Lynchburg. These sketches, I think they're really interesting. The man on the left, I believe, is police officer, yes. And the one on the right, they just identify as Mr. Lewis. This is a whole write-up again on the dogs, bringing criminals to justice, and how he got his nickname. Here's another, and this goes with that article. I'm assuming this is one of his sons, maybe Shelley. In this one you see you got 3 dogs, and I'm not sure what their names are. It didn't tell me. Bloodhounds for the dog show. So again, he's popular everywhere. He's making money, tracking down. He worked with the railroad a lot, tracking down people stealing coal, getting on the trains that shouldn't be on the trains, stealing, robbing people. I mean, he covered the gamut in the articles that I saw. But he was also, I think, a showman, because clearly I mentioned those manhunts, but he actually brought the dogs to these shows in Richmond. So you see it says, see Hurricane Branch and his noted pack of man-trailing bloodhounds. And from the articles I read, people turned out in droves just to see him and his dogs. Prizes were awarded because of how his dogs performed at these shows. And then here we go again. Not everybody liked his dogs, so you'll see here that in West Virginia, one of his bloodhounds, John, actually had died at the coal mines. So he also was someone that railroad, or not just railroads, but labor unions and those who were not in favor of labor unions would hire for protection. My guess is at the coal mines, that's what he was there for. But anyway, what happened, his son was also there. And John's body will be given a decent burial. Interesting point, his hide will be stuffed. So at some point, he had at least one of them stuffed and kept, I assume, at his residence. Hurricane Branch and his dogs start the morning. This is talking about the search. In this case, county commissioners are looking for this man, Isaac Winder, and you'll see his name mentioned in the picture coming up. And then this gives you kind of an idea of what happened. And here you'll see bloodhounds on Winder's trail, very similar to some of the other pictures that we've seen of he and his dogs. I put this in there. These are some of the kind of cases that I found were interesting. In this one, it's the only one I ran across where he actually shot somebody. And in this case, one of the men drew a gun on him. And so this is the story now. I'm assuming it's his story. So what really happened, who knows? But his story anyway. One of the men drew a gun, but the latter fired first, and Hurricane Branch was going to Norfolk. A second person, when he got on the train, he opened the door, a second one jumped. And then the third person pointed a gun at the officer. Branch fired first, man fell off the train, but he was evidently not dead. They said he was taken, and gives his name, taxed $5 and costs for that. Interesting here to me on the left. So the reason I say I think he was like a promoter himself, a showman. If you'll see here, what they say is the Virginian, talking about the Virginian pilot, gives it while it's hot and gets it straight. Another communication comes today in a letter from Hurricane Branch. So he sent letters to the newspapers. In this case, I think it's interesting because he says, please give me enough space to correct a report in a Norfolk paper to the effect that I was the man who did the shooting at Kilby Wednesday night. I was only one of 5 trainmen and detectives. It's not just to say I was the one that did the work, but he didn't fire the shots. This gentleman charged with murder of his neighbor, George Jones. His name was John Wilkins, and they're looking for him, and Hurricane Branch runs across them, and the exchange is kind of neat. Hurricane Branch found Wilkins just before night, fishing at Lake Kilby. "Good evening, John. Are you catching many?" "Yes, sir, I'm getting some." "Well, John, they have sent me up after you. I will have to lock you up." And he says, "It's no more than I expected, sir. I know they have been talking about me, and I've been expecting you to arrest me for 2 weeks." So he had that reputation. This is one of two I call most famous cases that he was involved in. So this murder took place in Smithfield. Gentleman was Charles Beverly Turner, and he was a timber person who was very wealthy and had a daughter that was about 16 or 17 years old. And there was this gentleman, A.C. Nick Gilligan. They grew up together, from what I gather, and eventually became sweethearts. But Mr. Turner was not really in favor of them dating or being together. And so Mr. Gilligan shows up at the house after he and Isabel, was his daughter's name, have had a falling out. And there's different versions of the story. In essence, the story of how the young man shot and killed his sweetheart's father. The murder happened about 2 or 3 days after Christmas in 1899. So Gilligan shows up at the house. After they've had their spat, he leaves and comes back. He comes back, he has a gun, a shotgun, and he borrowed that from a friend. He goes back to the house. The story says he went out to the barn where Mr. Turner was. Evidently, they had some words. His side of the story is he felt threatened, and he shoots Mr. Turner basically in the head with a shotgun. There's been talk among the Gilligan family, from what I understand, about the reason why Beverly Turner did not want A.C. Gilligan to date his daughter, and that was that there's a possibility that Mr. Gilligan was actually Mr. Turner's son. They were very close. His father worked for Mr. Turner, and whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it was a rumor. After this was all over, and he's on the lam, Hurricane Branch, here you'll see, he was out looking for him. He offers a reward, first of all, $200. And the idea was it would lure him back so that Hurricane Branch and the police can capture him. It never happened. He turns himself in. A friend of his tells him, go to these 2 sheriffs. One was a sheriff of Surrey, one of Alawite County. They literally take him to Petersburg because, again, there's a fear that if they come to Isle of Wight, he's going to be lynched. So it's a whole nother story about the trip and what happened. And Hurricane Branch's involvement was limited. He testified in the trial, but ultimately Gilligan was convicted and spent time in the penitentiary. He died in prison, so he was 25 at this time. He died in prison, he was 29, and died of some sort of health concern. This is the next famous case that Hurricane Branch was in. It was very similar, actually, in a way to the Turner murder. 2 young people in love, in this case, Jim Wilcox and Nell Cropsey. They had been dating, and at some point, supposedly again, they broke it off. He said he left her crying on the porch at her house. He goes home and goes to sleep. Next day, nobody can find her. And this goes on for a number of days. And so even with law enforcement involved, they decide, the father decides, Mr. Cropsey, to bring in Hurricane Branch. So, as this article will talk about, he brought his dog Tiger there. He was received as, I don't even know, a hero or a celebrity. I'll read you just a little bit about this. The citizens of Elizabeth City gave Hurricane Branch a hand as he stepped off the train, and he smiled at the reception he was getting. Chief Dawson stepped forward to shake hands. They walked back together. Hurricane Branch knocked on the door, rolled it up, and there was the baggage handler with a tether on his dog Tiger. He made through the throng back up to a clear space, and then he talks to the people at one point and just says, "Dear citizens, just to let you know, this is a working dog." And I mean, it sounds like something out of fiction or a movie, but he was that popular, and this is over in Elizabeth City in North Carolina. So takes the dog. Long story short, the dog goes out, goes through a field, goes through some other areas, just to the dog, sniffs it, goes out, goes to a pier, and at the end of the pier, the dog stops. So people disperse because they're like, he didn't find her, like he failed. He sends the dog back. They do another round, same thing happens. 40 some days later, her body washes up in that same river. So the dog tracked her to where she last was, is kind of the moral to that story. But Jim Wilcox ended up being arrested. He served time, and I think he was later pardoned because they really had no tangible evidence against him. So his son, John Taylor Branch, and Shelby Lee Branch, they both followed in his footsteps. They opened, as I said earlier, one opened an office in Norfolk, one in Knoxville. And then they pursued detective work. So Norfolk and Knoxville. Strikes handled in all phases. Again, I found some really interesting articles where he and his sons show up in labor disputes, one with textile workers. And the textile owners hired him to come in to disperse the laborers. And there was an article in the labor union paper that was not very complimentary of the Branch boys at all, as you can imagine. But again, they did it all. Okay, publicity. Again, I talked about how popular he was. This is a little snippet out of a newsletter at the Historical Society that kind of caught my attention. So they had an annual candlelight tour of certain areas of Suffolk, big homes such as this Darden mansion. But Hurricane Branch lived on South Broad Street. And so I just thought this was kind of interesting that they put this in the write-up. So 1910 South Broad Street, describing it, but then they put in, excitement was produced with some regularity when Mr. John Hurricane Branch, the famous detective, came flying out of his driveway on that same street. He, along with his pack of bloodhounds, would be heading for the railroad station. He and the dogs were called all over the country to track criminals and solve crimes. So I never thought about actually, if you lived on that street, watching him going in and out with these dogs and whatever he had back at that time, a horse and buggy. It had to be quite interesting, I'm sure. This is actually, this magazine I'd never heard of. but they're evidently odd advertisements is what they're talking about. So they pulled this one, and it says it's from the Virginian Pilot, and it appeared on this year, the present year, which I think is 1910, but I couldn't find any dates for this. And it's Hurricane Branch. Wanted, a young white man to assist in detective work and handle bloodhounds. Enclose a stamp. I now have a pack of 4 bloodhounds prepared to work. Any and all calls attended to promptly. Charges are reasonable. I mean, all the normal business stuff. But this part right here piqued my curiosity. Any information leading to the whereabouts of my son, Shelley, will be appreciated. I can find nothing about his son missing. I'm going to keep looking because that just really makes me wonder. You take out this ad, but in the middle of it, you stick, by the way, if you know where my son is, let me know. But anyway, just a very truly odd ad there. Only article I really ran across where he gets hurt. So he's out there chasing all these people down, running through fields, jumping on and off trains, all these things he's doing. But evidently he was pretty badly hurt here. And as it says, he was thrown from his horse while following the bloodhounds. And he was thrown against a tree. The horse fell against him and trampled him. And the dogs were called off. Branch was carried home. I didn't see anything after that. But yeah, it was a dangerous business that he was in. And if you think about the time period, he was relatively a young man when he started all of this in the 1900s. The last few slides here. John J.S. Branch observes his 92nd birthday. Okay, well, you know, again, publicity. He's like some celebrity. We're going to now write an article about him celebrating his birthday. And again, talks about being a member of the Masonic Lodge for 70 years. Here's the best part. When asked how he would spend his 92nd birthday, he said he'd have no special celebration, but expected to sit on the porch of his home on South Broad Street and greet all of his friends who came to congratulate him. I wanted to end with this same picture of him again. But this was taken from Facebook, 2021. And I just found it interesting that even in that time period, people are still talking about Hurricane Branch. The 59 years he was with Nansemond County, High Constable in Chuckatuck, and his relentless pursuit of criminals gave him the name Hurricane Branch, which was quite popular south of the James and people all over the country. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.